Welcome everybody to another Spark Talks. I'm here joined with Alexandria Burek, who, Alexandria, you've been in the industry for 15 years. Tell me about your background a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Evan. So for the last 15 years, I've spent my entire career doing everything fleet, from walking under trailers to starting up fleets, doing maintenance strategy, anything in between, and I'm not done yet. So it's been a great experience across the industry, and I love that never-ending learning cycle here on the fleet side of things. So yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, I imagine. So 15 years, you've seen a lot of trends, a lot of things come and go. What do you think are the most pressing challenges for people in this day and age? In the modern market, what are fleet operators dealing with that's causing them to lose the most sleep?
Yeah, I think it's two things when you think about it. It's keeping costs low and over delivering when it comes to customer satisfaction. So that's your on time delivery. That's, minimal to no delayed deliveries and shipments. And I think people are struggling with that a little bit more than they care to admit.
hmm And what's keeping them struggling? What are the obstacles to them solving these challenges?
I think part of it is a lack of visibility. Right now we're in this data space. Everybody's got data coming from every which direction. It's almost overwhelming, and it's not necessarily packaged in a way that's useful for the end users or for the people that need to take action on the data. So I think that's part one. I think also part two is, it's not necessarily data systems have been put in place, but they're not necessarily always talking to each other. And obviously, that's dependent on where a tech organization is within their tech maturity. And often, I'm seeing that fleets are not necessarily always on the cutting edge front end of that, leading the charge. They're sort of the mid to late adopters in some of those things. So that's what I like to help people kind of become aware of and get going on.
Okay, so the successful companies out there, the ones that are actively succeeding in this challenging market, in this challenging day, what are they doing differently? What are they doing that is making them successful?
Yeah, so I think they're paying a lot of attention to the data quality. I think they're making sure that their systems are talking vertically integrated. That's a first step right there. If you have a bunch of data that's not really communicating and stacked and layered in a way that can be delivered out to the end user, the person who has to make the take the action on the data that you're collecting, then they're not going to go and seek it. Everybody's got a workforce down to bare bones in most cases. There's not a lot of free time in people's day to just go searching around throughout the data, mining data. If we're not packaging up, putting it in people's inbox and merging data sets to make decisions, then I think that we're just going to fall behind.
So you got a couple things there that you were touching. You're talking about the people, and they're solid. They're not going to go looking for the data, and then we have the
Mm-hmm.
challenges with the data.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some sort of relationship between the people problems and the data problems, and does this all just make one big problem?
Yeah, I think when I think about bridging people and technology, there's some core guiding principles I've used throughout my career, and I always joke that I'm a tech implementation specialist, disguised as a supply chain professional or transportation professional. So the key things that have made me successful is bringing in the end users. So that's drivers, that's mechanics, that's the operators, the operation side of the business, and really bringing them in on the ground floor, educating them on why we're considering making this change or what we want to do or we think needs to be done, and then getting their insights and input. Because from my seat and where I'm prioritizing based on maybe a more corporate or mid to senior level perspective, I'm not necessarily thinking about all the ground floor, boots on the ground type considerations that they may have. So I find that by bridging that, those two perspectives, that also takes things a long way. It helps with the user adoption, and it also just helps put the technology in the people's hands that need it in a way that they can buy into using it to effectively reduce the maintenance expense, to reduce the delayed shipments, and to just use data to make proactive business decisions.
Now, in terms of getting you get the data, you get the people, you get them trained, you get these two problems kind of solved, or at least moving forward. What's the next step? How do people carry that forward?
Yeah, I think a big oversight on some people's ends might be failing to realize that once you set the data up, or you get the integrations done, you get the systems in place, there's the continuous improvement factor. So, for example, I've put a maintenance management software in place 2 years ago, and there's not a week that goes by that I'm not adding and keeping this continuous loop of feedback from the end users, whether it be mechanics, drivers, managers, etc. We're just constantly making improvements to fine tune and make the system 1% better every week. Yeah.
So, in that 1% better every week, that's a pretty heavy lift.
Yeah.
Are there I imagine there's some costs to these kinds of improvements, both in terms of getting the people and the continuous improvement and the training that's involved, but also the technology involved in implementing that, and whether it's purchasing or building it, but getting that implemented has a pretty heavy cost. What are you seeing in the market in terms of spending on these tools and technology?
Well, what I try to do is make sure that any technology I implement is cost neutral, if not beneficial. I know on a larger scale, industry wide, people are seeing and expecting a payback within the first 4 years of implementing a technology. I think that's more than doable, and especially if you're considering merging technologies and getting those action items out directly to the people that need them without a lot of in between there.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And any other thoughts on if you could leave our listeners and viewers with any other thoughts, what would it be in terms of tech powered fleet transformation, where they should be looking?
Yeah. So I'm very heavily interested right now in Industry 4.0 and moving into Industry 5.0. I think that's where the world is headed. And all I can say is that managers, especially senior level leadership, need to consider, as we're bringing in robotics, AI, all these other additional technologies that are great for reducing costs, improving customers' experience, we need to also make sure that we're not leaving the workforce behind. We need to consider upskilling and doing whatever we can to bring them along with us and make them part of the future and not left in the past. So that's one of the things I'm really passionate about advocating for.
Excellent. And how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I've been posting articles on a regular basis. So that's my link right there. Feel free to reach out. And I'd love to hear how people are working with technology and how we might be able to work together.
That's great. And for those of you listening and not able to see it, but you're on an audio platform, I'll make sure that in the show notes you have access to that LinkedIn link. So,
Cool.
well, thank you, Alexandria, for your time today and your great insights. And for everybody else, tune in next time for the next edition of Spark Talks. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Evan.